Hey, welcome everyone. Today my guest is Jess. I never asked you this, Jess. Do you go by Jess or Jessica?
Both.
Okay,
Yeah.
because I've been calling you Jess. Just like,
No, once people get to know me, I feel like when I hear Jessica, it feels I'm like, did I do something? So I
okay,
feel like people, once they know me, they say Jess. It's easier.
okay, perfect. Well then, Jess McClure here, and she is an executive coach, and I'm going to let her introduce herself and tell us a little bit about who she is, what she does, and who she works with.
Fantastic. Thank you, April. I'm so excited to be here. So, thanks for having me. I am an executive coach and leadership development, and I work with one on one with clients and also teams and facilitate workshops. I don't have a specific category that I work with, so I am not niche focused. I work with a lot of different executives across many different fields and in different types of organizations, from startups to larger companies. I like to say that my sweet spot is that person who's in that transition space.
Got it.
So if you are going from manager to then now leading a bigger group, what does that take to shift into that role? Or when you are stepping into the C suite, what happens to step into that role? So really that piece of what got you here might not necessarily work in the next role is that piece that I really like to help people with. And on top of that, I would say the thing that at the end of our work together, most people say you go into coaching often with an ROI, what you want to get out of it, a list of this is the things that I want to achieve. And the thing that I hear most afterwards is it increased my confidence. It increased my ability to work with my stakeholders. It increased my ability to hold my position. And so my favorite is I went from surviving to thriving. And so that's really what I focus on when working with my clients.
So good. I mean, because who wants to just survive?
Who wants
You
to
know,
survive? Yeah.
all of
And
us are like, oh, so many of us are in that mode and don't want to be. And so it's just so, it's like so supportive to hear that you take people from that place of survival to actually enjoying what you do.
yeah. And I come from a background in leasing space in shopping malls, Class A shopping malls. We developed large shopping malls around the world. And so it was very focused on, even though I was a leaser, around you had to work with all the compartments. You had to work with finance, you had to work with legal, architecture, operations, manager, all the components in order to have a successful outcome. So
Yeah.
that's the land that I come from.
Yeah, that's the space and that's true of a CFO now. And so we we've noticed a big shift in the expectations of CFOs
Yeah.
as far as them being, kind of rear facing numbers, um, you know, this is where we came from to this is where we're going, this is where we need to go. And along with that, everything is shifting as far as, the tools that they are now expected to understand and what's at their disposal. And so
Yeah.
as you're working with not just CFOs, but executives in these spaces or aspiring executives, what are some of the challenges, or maybe what is the challenge that you see as being um, the one that arises most often?
In today's landscape, I think you have to move faster, be smarter. You're you're constantly inundated with new information, and we don't know what the end goal necessarily is. And so, how to be in that space. One of and there's probably like four things that I'm going to say all the time where I'm like, this is the number one thing that I hear from people all the time.
Right.
This is one of the most important, is
Yeah.
that space for strategy and white space. And when you are deep in your fire drills. And because we are working now with limited amount of resources, limited amount of people, and we have more on our plate and we're expected to think bigger, think faster, all of these things, it's hard for us to take the time on the unknown. And that is the space that's so important now in regards to either scenario planning. What are the 5 directions that this could go in? And so giving a time for each of these pieces, and or what are the processes? What is the current system that's not working? And where do I need to focus on it in order to make it best for me now and in the future?
Okay.
So right now I have a client, he's in supply chain. And we were just talking about he's had on his list for the past 3 years about bringing product over from China and working on having a more local aspect and diversifying where their product is coming from. And for 3 years, he put it off. And he's like, if I had only focused on the thing that I knew was coming, and I didn't have the bandwidth for it. I didn't think about it. So I didn't do it. And so now it's become a fire drill. And that is the most common thing that I hear. And especially for CFOs, you have to be in this space right now, I think, of automate, 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 because everything is automation or moving towards that direction. And so people also, it's not, I think people still are in the old Excel sheets and what is doing, the old traditional way of doing things. But the future, the wave of the future is how can you automate and how can you use all the tools out there that are at your disposal? So not only do you have to be strategic in your thinking, now you also have to learn all these new components, figure out which one is the best for your company, and make the leap to do it without knowing the outcome. When the end, that all eyes are on you. So if it doesn't go well, you're the holder of that. And that's a lot of stress on a person.
Yeah. So when someone comes to you in that place, what do you do? You talked about creating space.
Yeah.
And so how do you work with a client? How do you teach them to create that space when they're coming to you saying, I literally don't have it. Like I don't have it, you know? How do you walk
Yeah.
them through that so that they go from not having it to, like you were saying, thriving and creating that space to be strategic and not putting off the things they know they really want to and need to do.
Yeah. Well, as a thought partner, one, it's helping people gain clarity on what that future state looks like. So, what is the thing that you want? What will make the business go better in 1 year from now? What is currently not working in your system? And just giving people that space to talk it through. Showing up, honestly, working with a coach for an hour is white space.
Yeah,
It's
good point.
time for you to gain clarity of what is working and what's not working. And and um and what you're willing to start trying. And then in between the sessions, I always say it's like we come up with a hypothesis, and then in between sessions, it's you are testing the hypothesis with little experiments to see what works and what doesn't work. And the knowledge you get when you go into those experiments is super helpful. So I think oftentimes we think, okay, I need white space. I'm going to create an hour on my schedule every day for white space. And then we have an hour and we're like, oh, I have a fire drill. So I'm going to do the fire drill. Or, oh, my email is overwhelmed. So I'm going to look at my email and get back to people. Or we go to the thing that is known rather than being super clear. Okay, I said I'm going to do these things, and what's one step I can work toward it. And don't go, I'm going to do an hour on my computer, an hour a day for the next 5 days. Like start at 30 minutes I'm going to do 30 minutes on Wednesday and I'm going to work on this one piece. What would this one piece success look like? And it's funny because I was talking to, she's a fractional CFO, and she was saying that what her work right now is automating everything. And she says what she does is she goes into these companies and she sees what's broken and she fixes the systems. She gets all the teams together. She starts talking about the organization, the structures, how everything works, understands every little component of it, and then streamlines it so everyone's talking together. Everyone knows what their role is and how they can move forward.
Mm.
And I think when we're entrenched in roles or politics or anything else, we're not looking at what's right in front of our face of what needs to get fixed. There's a really good book out right now called, and I just listened to it for, I'm in a book club with a bunch of other coaches and we just listened to it, so it's top of mind. It's called, what's it called? Dan Heath, called Reset. I don't
Okay.
know if you know it.
Mm-mm.
And he talks about people going into, when you go into a company, and he was talking about delivering pharmaceuticals in a hospital. And when they order the pharmaceuticals, it basically takes 6 days for the pharmaceuticals to arrive on the floor. And so this new, I don't know if he was CEO, COO, whatever he was, but he went in and he looked at what the problem was. 6 days is too long. FedEx gets it to us in a day and a half. What's the 4 days that's taking us to the next thing? And so started to interview people about, oh, well, the carts are squeaky, or we batch it, or we do this. And so started to listen and then take piece by piece what is fixable. And so I invite people to listen who are listening right now. What's the piece that's broken? What's so entrenched that you don't even see it? Or how can you look at it from like this fractional mindset? If I was coming in brand new, what do I need to see here? And I know it's easier said than done, but taking that time, because it's changing. Fractional is the wave, I feel, right now that people are looking at. And so in order to stay top of mind and really keep your business moving forward, I think you got to think a little bit like that fractional.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I like that. And you had talked about, so a couple of points here. One of the ways to create space is working with a coach, right? So if you have an hour that you set with someone else, you're going to show up. And then two, having that someone else ask you those questions, that's really, really powerful. And I don't know if people understand how powerful. When I was a career coach, all I would do is ask people questions about what they do. And as they're reflecting and I'm asking them, more and more questions, they're like, "Oh, wow, I really am good at this," or "Oh, wow, I never saw that," right? So that action of just having someone else reflect back to you is really powerful. And then like you said, then you can start to take micro action. So if you can't fit in an hour, start with 30 minutes. And if you
Yeah.
can't, and if you can't fit in 5 conversations, fit in one and go ask one person about the process, or something like that.
Yeah.
So you take micro actions.
And
Um,
if you're coming time and time again, and you're not, like, we all know that thing. Like, think of the thing in your head. What's the thing that you want to create?
yeah.
Every single person listening is like, oh, yep, I know the thing that I want to create. And so when you have somebody accountable on the other side, so if it's not a coach, but if it's yourself, if it's a mentor, if it's somebody that is, in a different company, depending on what your level is, it's very lonely at the top. And I think that you need to make sure, and I wanted to say this too, because I know that I think CFOs it's something like 18% are women. And so that means 80% of CFOs out there are men. And women, historically, I don't want to make a blanket assumption, women historically are better about talking to their friends and finding colleagues and finding other people to vent, to brainstorm, to yada, yada, yada. And I find that men specifically, when they come in for coaching, a lot of the coaching is around vulnerability and not being able to share their fears
Mm.
about their role,
Yeah.
about what's happening around them because they don't want to look weak. And especially if you're a CFO at the top of the thing, you're meant to be the CEO can be crazy. Or, if you imagine like a CEO at a startup who's like can change your mind all the time and be like, ah, and everyone kind of gives them grace. The CFO, for the most part, we expect them to be the calm, cool, collected, but they
Right.
know all the inner things that are happening. They are the ones who are worried about the money. They're the ones who know everything and have to hold it. Everybody else is like growth, growth, and the CFO has to be like, okay, yes, and right. That's a lot of stress.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. So speaking of dealing with that stress, you and I had talked a little bit offline about something that you walk your clients through
Yeah,
to help start the sessions grounded so that, they have a space, that coming back to that word space to
yeah.
be able to, start some of these brainstorming sessions or, whatever you do after that. Would you mind, kind of like
I
walking
love that
us
you
through
brought it back to that. Yeah,
that?
we just started talking, and yeah. So I think in this day and age, we all are such quick context shifters. So we often have a meeting that goes right into the top of the hour, and then we run into another meeting, and we're not doing the planning. Or, I mean, that's a lot of white space too. Is planning for meetings, planning for your direct reports, all of that, creating space so that you know what you're talking about when you walk in or what you want to talk about. And I think especially for CFOs, they have to context shift a lot between a lot of different hats depending on who speaks up to or comes up to them. So I love this exercise and I do it with most people that I work with. And even if you're not a meditator, anything like that, I find that it's helpful. So what I'm going to invite you to do, you can do it with your eyes open or your eyes shut. And I want you to take your palms and put them flat on your thighs and keep your feet flat on the floor. And I just want you to take a breath here, feeling your feet on the floor and your hands on your thighs. Maybe as you take a breath, you let your shoulders drop and just breathe into that breath. And now I'm going to have you focus on the ground beneath your feet and feel either your feet in your shoes supported by the ground as you take another breath in through the floor. And now I'm going to have you focus on your heart. As you take a breath in through your heart, I want you to imagine it expanding just 5% more on the X breath. And then I want you to come back. And how do you feel, April?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
feel calm. I do feel a sense of, okay, I can do this, space.
Yeah. So, what I invite people to do is if you're in a big meeting and you feel nervous, you can do all of that. I did all that with my eyes open. So,
Right.
it's 3 points: butt, foot, heart, and breathe. And then if you want to add another element, if you know that there's an area that you have difficulty around, either there's a person that you have a hard time when you're working with, if you get nervous when you're going into board meetings, if you are whatever your piece of, oh, I get a little anxious in that piece, you can do that. And you can also grab something like a stone or, most people have something around their desk desk that's going to be, this is the thing that I'm going to focus on in order for me to remember to do that breathing, remember to get back into that comfortable space, remember to know that I know enough, remember that everyone around me is worried about this too.
Mm.
And I think women especially have spaces to go to in order to share their concerns and their fears and be like, it's lonely at the top. I have no one else to talk to. I can't really talk to other people because everything I do is so confidential.
Right.
So I can't share my finances with a lot of people or get an NDA if you have a mentor or something like that. Where women, I think, are more apt to talk about this than men are. Men go off into the golf fields and they're together, but they might not be talking about, well, do you ever get nervous talking to the board?
Right.
Do you ever, do you ever fear this thing? Like,
Right.
I don't know, they're having those conversations.
Right.
And, we're dealing with this loneliness epidemic right now. And so take some time to one, know that that's normal, and two, to create a couple of tools to, just take a minute to calm down. Now that you're hearing it, you can't unhear it. That's the first stage
Yeah.
of adult, learning is once we know something, now we know it.
So for those listening, I mean, this could be one of their tools, right? This could be one of their tools that they take into that next, you know, whatever performance evaluation, board meeting, whatever it is that feels difficult.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
Breathe is a
Hmm.
tool. Number two tool is find white space and
Right.
hold yourself accountable to it
Yeah.
and do something to make yourself accountable to do it in order to, talk to a direct report and say, hey, I'm doing this. Will you check in with me afterwards? Or this is the
Mm.
outcome, or your CEO, or, I feel like present day, you need a team around you. There's this, I think I interrupted you. You were going to ask a question. I
No,
just
you're good. No, keep going. Keep going. This is good.
So I think the other thing that's really important to know about CFOs and anyone executives is we talk about it as a plus. So the horizontal line is your business acumen and your knowing. What do I know? What do I need to know? What's the system that I need to learn for myself? What's the knowing piece? And then you have this piece, which is the vertical, which is the I don't know what I don't know. And so this is where the emotional intelligence comes in. This is where the storytelling comes in. This is the what do I need to learn that is not the finite, but can expand my thinking so that I'm not stuck in a singular path. Because the people who are stuck are the ones who aren't going to grow. And you need all of these other pieces in order to really, I think, move to that next level.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so if what would you say is is there, I mean, again, you said there are several things that you're hearing now from, from leadership as far as challenges. And we've provided two tools. What's a third? Let's add one more tool to that tool belt that will really help those listening with some of the challenges you mentioned. And if you want to name the challenges, that would be fine too. Like, again, what you're hearing, because to your point, that makes it feel less isolating if you know that other people are experiencing the same thing that you are. And then
Yeah.
let's add another tool to our tool belt to help deal with those challenges.
Yeah. Um, this is the one that's jumping into my mind. And so I'm going to invite people to do it in real time, but you're going to be my guinea pig.
Okay, I'm
Okay.
I'm I'm here for it. Yeah.
Okay. So I want you to think of a challenge that you currently have. And we don't need to out you on Zoom. So you can do it mentally in your
Okay.
head.
Okay.
Okay. So
Hmm.
I want you to think of a challenge that you are currently having where you feel incredibly blocked. And if I were to say, okay, April, you have 3 minutes to like let loose about this thing, this person, this situation,
Yeah.
what would it, can you come up with a situation in your head?
Yeah.
Okay. So if you're watching, you might want to write it all down.
Okay.
What's the thing that I would get completely off of my chest right now about something? Okay.
Okay.
Now, you've got your thing. Now, I want you to imagine you're sitting there, but now you're April who's sitting 4 feet away from you.
Okay.
And I want this April to look at the April sitting there. What does she notice about the one who's sitting there?
That she's tense and stressed and
Yeah. And what does she want for her?
for her to not be tense or stressed.
Yeah. And she wants whatever, a higher view. And then we can go even higher. And now I want you to be a fly on the wall.
Hmm.
And as a fly on the wall, what does she notice about the two Aprils sitting there?
Um, I don't know. The fly just sees two people.
So if we were talking it through, I think that's
Yeah.
great. It's similar to the work of Byron Katie. Of it, we get
Okay.
to the place of this is let me dump everything out that I'm currently working on. It
Yeah.
could be writing it out, just getting it out someplace, typing it out in a document, the thing that I'm working on. And then if I were to remove myself, what is the thing that I'm noticing about the person with this problem? 90% of the time when we do this exercise, we get to this place of they're taking it too personally. They're looking at it from a myopic point of view. They're only seeing one side of the story. They're locked into this. And the other person, it can be another perspective of, well, what might not be true of what I'm telling myself?
Let's see.
And the third perspective, second person usually is going to go a little bit opposite and is going to still have a perspective. And then the third person is usually able to kind of let go of all of the ego mind of all of the this is happening and kind of and let it fly. Was that too much of an esoteric tool?
So the third person is like, if you were completely unattached, like how would you handle this problem? Not having any attachment to the outcome or to take the feeling out of it, because the fly doesn't have a feeling.
Exactly. Exactly. And it's a really great
Yeah,
exercise when you want to do your strategy session.
right,
Use that tool to get it all down, get another perspective, and then what's that third perspective without anything?
right. And I would imagine that a coach is great for this. Until you get it,
Yeah.
it can be really helpful to have someone walk you through that. I,
Yeah. And I will include a little PDF for anybody who wants to
okay.
download it. And so they can walk through, they can have these tools to look through them and see if it's helpful for them.
Yeah, I love that. So bring us home. Tell us about, someone or, a situation like where you had someone who came in with those feelings you talked about. I'm in survival mode. I don't know what I'm going to do. And and then what were the results of implementing some of these tools? What did the person say or do or feel after, several
Uh,
months of these things?
yeah, I'll use the person who said that they were thriving. And because what I can tell you, it's very similar what we were talking about before. And this was a person who always had to be the smartest person in the room,
Right.
always had to know the answer. Always everyone came to them and they were always knew everything. But internally, that was not the case.
Mm.
Internally, there was a lot of fear around that and about getting found out that they might not know something. And so it showed up externally in that they worked a lot of hours, they prepared a lot, they knew everything, they never wanted to be caught blindside. And so a really simple practice was they had to start saying, I do not know the answer to that, but I will find out for you. And they had to start going to people and say, I'm curious, what would you do in this place? I'm curious, what would they had to start showing some vulnerability that they didn't know everything. And what happened was people started showing up to support them in a different way.
Hmm.
They started coming to them to be thought partners with them. They wanted to work with them more. Because it wasn't now just me in a silo that knows everything, it was somebody who was offering to be more curious. And that opened up this new ability to work with people, and it changed how they felt about themselves because it gave them some grace that they could be a human
Right.
and not have an answer to everything. And think about it. If somebody were to ask you a question right now, and I were to say, you know what, that's a really great question, and I don't know the answer right now, but I will get it for you and I will get back to you. How do you feel about that person versus I will give you an answer, or next time I'm going to spend 12 more hours figuring it out so that I will have the answer. Like there's a place for knowing an answer, and there's a place for I trust my team to have this answer, and they'll get back to me, you, or I will with something else.
Right.
And so I want to say that is so much of the journey is trusting your inner strengths and trusting what you don't know, that's okay. That's
Yeah.
okay to not know and be curious.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. That's another tool. You just added another tool to the tool belt.
There you go.
Perfect. Well, then I think that's a good wrap place because, we humans can only remember so much,
Yeah.
um but just like she said, she'll provide and you'll have it linked. All the registrants will have this tool linked so you'll know where to find it. And then Jess's contact information will be included on there as well, so that if you would like to, explore more and be able to work with her, you'll have her contact information there. And
Thank you, April, for having me. I
yeah,
appreciate it.
absolutely. And then everyone, um, there was one other thing I was gonna say. Now I forgot it. Oh well, we're just gonna wrap it up then. And thank you for being here. And hopefully we'll do this again sometime.
Thanks, April.